Hello YouTube peeps, I am back and I am live, although I'm fully expecting no one to turn up. And I purposefully didn't give people a heads up. This is the first time that I'm going live, and the reason that I've chose to go live is more to do with the fact that I'm just not getting a chance to come onto YouTube. I am just overrun with lots of things that I won't bore you with, and basically it means that I have no time for editing. I have to preserve that time for Patreon and other stuff. So I figured a live would be prime opportunity. I have given a few test runs a try today and not found them to be great, but we're going to roll with it and hopefully this will work, because I've seen a lot of really interesting VRs come out and I haven't been participating because I either do the VRs on Instagram Live, which is where I hang out more frequently, or I don't get time to do them because I'm still working through my deck collection videos, which I haven't been able to edit for a while. So that's my long-winded explanation as to why I decided to go live, and I'm just hoping that I don't get any weird botty type things jump in the chat, but hopefully this is good sound, good video quality, and I'm going to jump in. I've chosen to do Candy, Soul and Soil's hashtag top 10 curiosity decks because I've had so much fun watching this. There have been so many random, obscure, interesting and bizarre decks, plus the kind of usual curio cabinet type things, and it's been a delight. I feel like people have shared more strange decks than usual, and that's definitely my vibe. So sorry if you can hear outside noise as well. As I say, you're not getting the nice finished edited edition. Oh, awesome. Hello DD Taylor, and thank you so much for letting me know, because honestly I was worried. I've gone from being really comfortable with doing lives on Patreon and on Instagram to feeling like an absolute noob. So there's probably going to be lots of so's and umming and ahhing, but it's all good. Candy's description of this tag, by the by, says the decks that are different, decks that go their own way, that are more curious than most, decks that would belong in a cabinet of curiosities. And what I did after realising that essentially my life and the things that I enjoy and have an interest in could mostly fit in a curiosity cabinet, okay? That's just, you can see aspects of my altar. It's a very good depiction of just me as a human being. Like, my personality could probably go in a curiosity cabinet, let's be honest. Hello Martin, hello my dear. So because of that, it was actually quite difficult to pick 10 decks because I had to weed out quite a few. And what I decided to do was maybe not show so many that other people had shown already to help me decide. But one of the cool things that I noticed a lot of people were doing before they jumped in with a tag was showing a few of their curiosities, basically, bits and pieces that they've got that they feel would also go in a cabinet. Now, given that the array of my stuff on my altar is pretty self-explanatory, I'm not going to show too much more. What I will say is everything that you see is ethically sourced, either by people who forage that I buy from or very occasionally by myself. But I thought I would show you a couple of things that for me, they remind me of what I would have or feel reminiscent of what I would have in a curiosity cabinet, even if they're not maybe something that others would have. So when I think of curiosity cabinets, because I am very kind of, I don't know, maybe my aesthetic's a bit like Natural History Museum, but without the startled taxidermy, because that still freaks me out. I'll be honest. And the the artwork as well, the sort of, I suppose, fine art or whatever the term is for it, that was in, you know, animal encyclopedias and plant books and stuff before photography became more of a thing. And so, really, one of my curiosities, which isn't that strange but is quite popular in curio cabinets, I find, are older books with those type of art styles in them. I'm not going to pick this one up because it's huge, so I appreciate you can only see a portion of it. But I look for these in charity shops, so I thrift for them basically. And this Field and Meadow Guide it feels like a curiosity to me. Now, maybe you won't think so, I'll be really interested to hear, but this is something that I'm really fond of. Oh, is the artwork, sorry, is all at the front. And I'm just showing everyone spiders, which no one's going to enjoy. But yeah, this is that kind of appreciation for nature and the curiosity of the life and death cycle, I suppose, all summarised into one. And because of my love for this, I have these, which these are probably more of a curiosity, and I feel like some people may be familiar with them. Now, these were sold many years ago on in tea bags, I believe tea bags. Let's have a little look. Yeah, Brook Bond tea, but also on cigarettes, in cigarette packets, you know. And I was very late to the party. I had never heard of them, and my friend sent me a couple in a package. And it turns out one of my grandparents knew exactly what they were and found a bunch of them in probably a charity shop. So these are some of my curiosities. If I have doubles, I use them in my art journal, and the others I keep because, as I say, like these are Canadian geese, for example, Canada goose, and then you've got a species breakdown, and that's the kind of nerd I am. That to me is good nerdy fun. And also, if I can pop them out, I have some mixed in here somewhere, some prehistoric animals as well. So again, very kind of natural history museum vibes is basically what my space looks like in a nutshell. I can see comments, I'm trying to scroll down. Oh, you love books like that too. They are so beautiful. It's always the type of artwork that I wanted to draw, but I'm such a freaking perfectionist. Drawing just took me forever. Now, bones, furs, antlers, you can see my curiosities, little vials with, is it going to focus? Yes. With what's in them underneath. I do death craft working with animals, which I'm not going to explain here, but you can look it up. So a lot of the time when I find things, I'll do a ritual for them rather than keeping them, but every now and then I will keep them and I'll put them in a little terrarium or do a ritual with them. So I've got this bumblebee and this wasp, which sadly I found within days of each other actually in my garden in different spots. And some of the other strange and wonderful things that I have in my space are pieces of gecko shed from my geckos. This looks like a little ghost face, and that is why I love it. I have some snail shells that again I find in the garden. Some of them are varnished to bring the colour back out. This is an animal medicine jar that I made. The cat whiskers were shed from my cat because I will scoop them up and keep them if I can find them. And my animal medicine jars have ingredients that I feel pulls on the animal's energy, you know, if you're working with them in more of a spirit capacity as opposed to a physical capacity. I did actually sell a couple of these, but predominantly I make them for myself. So definitely another curiosity. And the last thing that I pulled out were just a few fossils that I've got, because again, I'm just a strange human. I don't feel like I'm going to be alone in this. I feel like there's a meme going round at the moment where people say, you know, if you were that kid that picked up rocks and feathers and stuff, you just don't grow out of it. And that's essentially what happened. I have lots of feathers and good stuff. If you want to see the sheer amount of curios that I've got on my altar, then I do have an altar video, probably about 4 or 5 videos back on YouTube. So I'm not going to move the camera in case it freaks out on me, but we're going to jump into decks now anyway. Hello, Carolyn. I can't believe some people are actually here. I thought I'll get this done in secret and then I'll post it, but it is nice to have company. So I have more than 10 decks and I will just decide as I go along, but one of them that definitely makes the mark is the unnamed deck, which is by Witchwood Oracle. Witchwood do quite a few Oracle decks. They're all reasonably small ones, but they all feel like curio cabinet wonders, and I'm assuming that we don't see them around so much purely because they are a UK creator. So of course, very convenient for me, but maybe not so much for others. And their description, if I can find the descriptive card, is perfect. And of course I can't find it. Here it is. So it says, a post-mortem look at your future and fortune. I mean, it says it all really. And as someone who doesn't tend towards reading in fortune telling or more divining the future aspects, it's quite a strange deck for me to have, but I don't never read like that. It's just not really my go-to. It's certainly something that I still have fun with. Sorry, some of them are upside down because essentially what this deck does is it has 2 keywords, and then dependent on if it's reversed or not depends on what word you go for. So it gives you sort of a second lease of life for all of your cards, which is pretty cool. And there are skulls in every single image, which is a perfect curio cabinet, is it not? But also it has that very, for me at least, it's got like a kind of, I suppose, folk witchy vibe to it with some of the tools that I may have in and around my altar space, or more ordinary things that I would still use in the craft. And I love that about folk magic. And that's another reason why I felt like this was definitely a curio deck, other than just the sheer aesthetics of the whole entire thing. And my experience of reading with it has been interesting and spooky. Also, some of the symbolism is great for exploring further into craft workings, you know, magic workings with ink, or the folklore behind horseshoe. All in all, this just is a very good summary for me of like a curiosity deck in more of an obvious fashion, I suppose. So that's the first one. And I'll be interested to know if anyone's familiar with that deck, because I actually haven't met anyone else who's got that particular one. I know people that have others by Witchwood, but not that one. Next is one that I have seen lots of people mention. So I decided to only pick one of the two, because this is the Wooden Tarot, and then the little oracle deck that's made by the same creator is the Earthbound Oracle. So I've seen that a lot as well. And I picked this one of the two because this is, again, has that kind of bone forager vibe to it. There's antlers, there's bones, there's prehistoric skellies, there's a lot of obscurities in terms of like the whale has 3 eyes and it's in the clouds, of course. It has that macabre kind of vibe to it, but in a way that doesn't feel, I suppose, cute. Like, to me, you've got layers in macabre and you get some really cutesy stuff, which I don't mind, but it's not my go-to. And then you get this kind, which again, I feel like if they found a bird like this and it had extra eyes, we all know that that would go in a museum. It's exactly what they would do with it, because that's just humans. It would get put in a cabinet and people would stare at it. But it's the whole life-death cycle of this and the way that it's depicted, especially because it's on the wood. And I don't know what it is about me and decks that have this kind of vintage tea stained or wooden vibe, but I've noticed I've got quite a lot of them, and it's every single one of them seems to fit in with this theme, which is really interesting. None of them are kind of cutesy decks or anything like that. They definitely still have that curious vibe feeling to it. I think that any piece of these artwork wise could go up in a cabinet and it would look really cool. And you still have the nature elements as well, which I don't mind a bit of that scattered in and around. I think as a reader, I don't know that if any of these read particularly strangely. Maybe one will come to mind. I suppose the Memento, which I'll show next, that's kind of my spookiest reader. This is a chilled out deck for reading, but it definitely has that vibe about it. And also I know that it's a particularly strange deck to some people because of the amount of eyes. And there's a card in here that really creeps my friend and my stepmom out, because it's a flower that's literally full of eyeballs. Now, in my world, that's kind of the norm, to be honest. You know, I was brought up with a dad who likes the occult, the macabre, and beyond the macabre, like the wildly creepy and obscure and strange and all of the good words that you can think of. So I've always had quite a morbid curiosity myself for life, death, liminal spaces, how strange artwork can be, how much we can push the boundaries, what creeps certain people out and not others. So again, these are quite tame in terms of being strange, I feel. You know, I don't have any, I have one out there deck which I'll give people a heads up, but it's more just the language and some of the hilarious depictions, not so much. It's not going to freak anyone out, I don't think. Next, I know that people have probably, I don't know if anyone's mentioned this, but they've definitely mentioned the oddities, which I have also got. I don't think that I could do a curio cabinet without the Memento Mori, and one of the reasons is because this deck just lives on my altar constantly. It's never in its bag anymore. It's actually usually here for anyone who's wondering, and I've put my antler there because I've picked it up. One of the reasons that this feels so apt for a curio cabinet, and even just a witchy cabinet really, is the mixture of symbols, tools, you know, representations of the craft and life and death. They are so vast, because obviously it's a deck, that it means that I don't have to, not that I do anyway, but I don't feel the need to like own everything, because I have a lot of representation in this deck. And the whole foundation of this deck being Memento Mori makes it just the perfect fit for me. This is also the deck that's come to the cemetery with me, which I don't often take decks. I don't even often visit cemeteries, I must say, but that's what happens when I go. I am that witch. It's reminds me of some of the things that we would have in our cabinets as well, that maybe it wouldn't be a curiosity in that it's strange to someone else, but you know, when we have like trinkets from loved ones or from like centuries and centuries ago that we've dug up and found, or whatever it is, that's what come to mind with a pipe, for example. Those things that we find and decide that for some reason they feel precious to us, and we take them home with us, a bit like the kid who picks up the stones. You know, there's something about it. It has maybe someone's history interwoven with it, or We can do some spirit work with it, whatever it is. I find that when I think about curiosities, that still comes to mind. It's not just the strange, as much as I enjoy it. It's definitely the things that we create, the things that we find worth in, the things that have more of a history or maybe more of a story to them than others, because either they were handed down to us, or they're not new, you know, they were found, or they once had, they were once in someone else's possession who's not here anymore. That's kind of one of the things that this deck is reminiscent of, I suppose. And for me, most of these things, I'm not sure that I'd want a heart in my curiosity cabinet, but it would definitely fit there. should I ever feel the desire, which I is doubtful. But yeah, this deck is one of the ones as well that gives me creepy, spooky readings. I do use it to do a lot of readings that I otherwise don't do with other decks. So this does a lot of ritual work with me. I do a lot of magical work in sort of like crafted around this deck and with this deck. This is one of the very few, sorry it's heavy, that I will do spirit contact with, and for that reason as well, it's yeah, it's such an interesting deck. I should review it at some point, but I honestly wouldn't know where to start. Some of the work that I do with it still feels really sort of personal as well, but it's an absolute gem. And I suppose my next curiosity deck should then be, look at this bag. Is this not the cutest damn bag? Should be the Oracle of Oddities, which, you know, skulls. Need I say more? I don't think that I need to be honest. This is a little on the nose, I appreciate it, but again, anatomy as well. And I didn't include the Antique Anatomy Tarot because honestly, if I did, it would just be a video dedicated to Claire's work, basically, because you could argue that all of her decks have that vibe to it. Even the more astrological based ones still have that kind of mood, but this is especially strange. This is like it's been pulled out of a sort of a mad science meets dark anatomy kind of mood. I feel like that's you know, people who and not, you know, I'm not saying that I'm a fan of this at all, but this, it gives me like a scientific experiment vibe, and of course in real life, no, not a fan of that. As a gentle skeleton aesthetic, yes, I'm okay with that. Like the mixture of things that don't necessarily go together. And a few of the taxidermists that I know have actually started making these fantastical creations mixed with various bones from different animals, and they're making them into like this new being. It's such a cool thing to watch be created, and they are entirely bizarre. But this, I feel like this almost feels like the origin of that, you know? It's all the experiments gone wrong, all of the strangeness all wrapped up into one. And then of course, if you're not familiar with the oddities, the keywords in it are much more, I don't think, they're not strange, they're just more balanced than your average oracle deck. You know, a lot of the times there's that, I would argue, outdated belief now that oracle decks are only affirmational or, you know, hug decks or fluffy. And I think as time goes on, we've got a lot more tarot decks like that and a lot more oracle decks that are like this, where the keywords really range from things that are quite challenging to quite supportive and all that's in between. And this deck just does all of that fantastically. So it had to... I'll be honest, I actually don't usually keep the chakras in when I use this. And this is all 3 oddities deck for someone who's looking and thinking, that's chunky, I have cheated, but I never use them separately. Now I have all 3 of them, so I don't count it as a separate deck, because to me they were just sort of extensions of each other, if that makes sense. I have my next one also in one of these quirky glorious bags, so I'm going to show you that as well, because are these not the most gorgeous? I have probably 2 or 3 more of these embroidered bags actually, but not within reach. And again, what a mood. This is the best. I could have had this for the memento as well, but this really fits well with this deck. If I can find the card, and we've gone straight in with gore, I probably should have given a heads up, but it's not that bad. That is probably the worst card, in fairness. There's the title card, because I'm lazy. That's not the skull that I was looking for, but anyway, this has skulls in it. So if that's not a great little pairing, then I don't know what is. And for those who aren't familiar with this gem, which I may actually leave this one out on my altar now that it's out again, it's the Cursed Auguries Tarot. And it takes you through basically the story is of one witch, as far as I understand it, with sort of a lot of old craft and pagan references. It's very pippish, to the point that some people just aren't into it. When I say pippish, I don't mean Marseille. As you can see, the layout of them is very plain, but it takes you through such an interesting story, and it's a really challenging representation of the cards as well. Like, look at this for the Hermit, and I know that some people are just, their arachnophobia is going to be like, hell no. And I fully respect that. As I say, I like strange things. This reminds me of some of the comics that I used to buy. The choices for the pips as well are delightfully witchy, which, as you can see for me, whilst a lot of people have curio cabinets that don't define themselves as a witch or a pagan or anything, which I wholeheartedly understand. My dad wouldn't consider himself anything like that, but he definitely would have a curiosity cabinet. But because I do and I am, the 2 things sort of cross over a lot for me. So I understand that they are separate, but of course they're intertwined for me. But yes, the representation, so the cups are frog spawn. The swords are these like coffin type nails. The pentacles are apples, and then the wands are those branches. So that in itself has such a mood. And as I understand it, because it doesn't come with a book, the witch morphs from the woman that you see into the hare, and then she comes up against these other creatures. I don't think that she's meant to turn into the rest of them. And it has that kind of the side of witchcraft that either, I suppose, is considered more what people expect from when they watch TV, or the part that people don't want to talk about so much. It has a lot of that going on in here. And you get repeat characters as well, but also the animals that come up, the spider, the snake, the hare. You've got the snails for the chariot, and I wish I could find the devil card. Look at that for strength. So this is actually the witch as the hare. And we've got some, this feels like very witch's ladder kind of bone compass to me. Here's the devil. So the eyes are everywhere else, everywhere else other than on their actual face. tell me that you don't think this is a curiosity deck, and the play between the cards as well. So if you can remember strength, here it is. So in the Hanged Man, the snake has a hold of her, and then in strength she was having a go at the snake. So you'll see those repeat themes, but this is, again, everything that I would have in a curiosity cabinet, everything that just delights that kind of witchy part of my interests. And another deck that I felt like people might be interested in seeing, because again, it's not one that I see around often at all. And I think that possibly, other than again the creator being European, because I am sure that it's on sale, not on sale as in lower than its price, but I'm sure that it's sold quite often on Etsy, I believe. But I think it's probably quite a challenging deck unless people are really comfortable with their numerology, or you're quite happy to use like whatever system it is that you use and just put them onto the cards. I understand that the pips are probably a little bit challenging, but it definitely feels like it's earned a spot in the strange and wonderful just because of everything that's involved. So clearly my curiosity cabinet is there's a lot of death going on in it, isn't there? It's not meant to be morbid, I promise. Whilst it is a morbid fascination, I think that over the years I've tried to become more comfortable with the fact that I am mortal and of course will inevitably die, by being a part of the life and death nature cycles all around me. So that's something I've kind of the decks that I can't reach it. One of the decks that I nearly added in was the what's it called, Woodland Wardens. And the reason being is because again that deck has those kind of natural history, fine art, animal illustrations, and I feel that that is very curiosity cabinet, but it's not a particularly unique deck in that I've got a lot of animal decks, whereas this is solely a feather deck. And as someone who has a lot of feathers, which unfortunately you just can't see because they're out of shot, but I have bunches of them, mostly ones that I have found myself, but also a few from animals that I just would never stumble upon that people have sent me. So I've got a couple of owl feathers and I can't remember what type of turkey it is now, but I've got a turkey feather as well. But this feels like a curiosity cabinet for me because, as I say, I've literally got my feathers in bunches and I'm always using them for something, or they're always on display. I've actually had to put some of mine away because freaking moths, man. Moths eat feathers. Like, if you have feathers on display every now and then, in fact quite frequently, if you're someone who just gets moths in your house for whatever reason, get your feathers out and like just have a brush over them and make sure that there's no moths hiding in them, because they absolutely obliterated some of my crow and magpie feathers and I was genuinely really sad. Yeah, but how cool is this? Now, I don't know that I would have bought it for myself, but my friend sent it to me because she knows I love feathers. And the reason that it's really fun is because a lot of these birds I don't have their feathers from. I really enjoy having the photography as a kind of nerdy appreciation for them. And then, of course, I can add my animal layers on. It does come with a guidebook that's very sweet and succinct. it's quite affirmative, which is great. This isn't the right page, but it will tell you the bird and give you a little message. It's great for if you're feeling like you just want someone to read you a message, or you're looking for something maybe perhaps a little softer. But otherwise I tend to fall back on what I know about the animal, or I will go and research them. So I don't know, what do you think? That, to me, I would have feathers in my curiosity cabinet, and also strange decks that I don't see around very often. That is definitely a mood. And because I know that people are going to ask, I think that there's a website for this deck. I believe that they're bringing out an updated version, but I really don't keep up with things like that. I'm a bit rubbish. The next two, which I'm not going to show together because they're not related to each other, but are decks that I feel, how would I explain it? One is definitely like walking through a museum. No, they both are. They kind of have, like, again, museum vibes. Maybe history museums, or even like witchcraft museums. They are decks, again, that I am sure some people have, but I haven't seen them mentioned on YouTube. I don't think ever, but I can't keep up with everyone. This is the Broadbent Sisters clearing cards, and some of this is a very obvious curiosity vibe, and some of it is just the fact that the keywords are so, or the phrases, I suppose, are so obscure and interesting in themselves. There are actually two artists, because it's both the sisters that participated in this deck, so you can see these two will be done by one of the sisters, and this one, let's see if there's another one like it. Yeah, and these two by the other sister. But because they're all in the same colour, I find that it works together really well, and that in itself is quite sort of out of the ordinary for me. I don't have many mixed artist decks, but I feel like they created something quite successfully here that there wasn't too many decks like. I suppose the closest thing to this is maybe the postcards of the liminal space, in that some of the key phrases, again, you really have to sit with them and be present with what comes up through the symbology, and I suppose just what it makes you think of, how it makes you feel. It does come with a guidebook, and they have some really neat little messages in. But I find that when I use this deck, I will pay attention to different aspects of it each time. So if it's a particularly busy card, then it may be the light in the dream, one point, or whatever else is going on here, which I still cannot work out. Or it may actually bring to mind a dream I've had. The burning roses, like, this to me is strange, and yet I can get so much from this. And then the fallback is that you've got the nice little messages in the guidebook, which is, just to give you a quick peek, is like this. But I'd never heard of this. I hadn't really seen anything like it at the time, because I definitely got this before the liminal space, which it doesn't look like this visually, but again, it's, like I say, it's sort of the closest vibe, I suppose. Like the waxing, look, how awesome is that? And it looks like, to me, that looks like loads of snake shed. I've completely thrown my own train of thought. Which is why I usually don't do lives on YouTube. That and this video is forever long. But I just find this deck to be curious. For me, it's something that demands that you work with it in a certain way. You know, it's not that it's hard to work with, it's just that it asks for different parts of my engagement. It's not just a psychological reader. I can't just look at it and analyse it. So I don't remain just in my sort of intellect or my mind, if that makes sense. I'm more going into my feelings, but also sort of contemplating how these symbols may come up for me in other points in life. And I like it when decks push me a little bit further. It's not that I don't do that with any others, but this pushes me a little bit further than some of the more familiar, I suppose. And another curious thing about this is the message is rarely ever the same. Like a quiet pull, I've probably both read for myself, and I have used this for readings with other people on Instagram and in my Patreon. I've probably written maybe 4 or 5 entirely different messages just based on that one card, which you can do to a certain extent with tarot, but when you get like a particularly strange and fantastic deck, you can really go wild with it. The image you seek is now here. Like, what? I had to include this one. I love it. It's probably one of the most unexpected gifts that I ever got as well. And I am very fortunate, as you can tell, because I'm like, this was a gift, this was a gift. But it's so strange. It just popped up. The person who sent it to me isn't in the tarot community anymore either, and they didn't stay in touch. They sort of just left the tarot community. So even the engagement and the time that I knew them, it was all very short and wonderful and bizarre. So it has like a story attached to it as well. The next one is another museum-y feeling one, in that I feel like this has that archetype sort of vibe to it. Each one is a different symbol. Each one could be in its own little cabinet, and you walk through the museum and you learn about all of the different symbols and where they came from and what their rich history is and all of that good stuff. This is what the Hyde Tarot is. Another UK creator, actually. I didn't realise I had that many, but yeah. The Hyde Tarot has a bit of everything in it, and it's such a unique tarot deck because it works solely on an archetype per card or a symbol per card, whatever, you know, fits for you better. A bit like the Memento Mori, but just as a tarot deck. Like, obviously they don't look anything like each other, they're not inspired by each other, but I mean just the one thing, the essence that the whole card boils down to. And you can see that their titles are actually larger than the card position themselves. This is such an interesting deck. I have had it for a while and I still don't feel like I am at an intimate stage of knowing it. I'm at a comfortable stage of reading with it, because to me, actually, this is ingenious. Like, this makes so much sense. As the person who likes to work with symbols and archetypes, this is a mood for me. It's my jam. But what's really interesting is sitting with it, and then, because of course you didn't have to, you can use this as an oracle, and the creator does say that, but like sitting with the glove and working out, what does this mean to me for the lovers? I really enjoy that. I like a deck that's going to challenge me to find, think, or feel something different about an archetype or cult or whatever it is, rather than my fallback, rather than just my knowing. You know, I feel studied enough in tarot that I like to be thrown off of my game a little bit. I like to mix it up. Of course, not all the time, but the siren. I like this. And really interesting to see the siren depicted in such a different way than the kind of dark mermaid vibe that I so am used to and expect seeing when I hear the word siren. But this is something that I enjoy about this. And again, paintings, animals, stone carvings, various tools, amber. Tell me that this isn't like literally paying a museum ticket and walking in and going to explore what they've found. Now, I've mentioned museums a lot, so I acknowledge that with museums come some issues, especially when we think of theft and stuff. But again, I don't mean to glorify that aspect of it. I merely mean in terms of appreciating art and having that exploration of I suppose various corners and things that occur in the world, whether they're natural or whether they are human created. The gathering of them together is really, that's just one big curio cabinet. Okay, they could be done in a lot more respectful capacities. They definitely could do some healing there. But isn't that what we do when we create our own curio cabinets? Like, mine might be really skeleton based and macabre and have a real big focus on the life and death cycle, whereas someone else's might be I'm trying to think of, like, my dad really likes Punch and Judy. If anyone's familiar with that, that's going to be a really, really British thing to have said. But like the strange puppets and ventriloquist dummies, things like that. Old, I don't think he would be into actual old circuses, but like the sort of weird artwork that came with stuff like that. I know when I was watching these videos that a lot of people had decks that had that kind of circus influence, or just bits of history that now are quite dated with adverts and things like that. So mine's, I'm not saying this is the only way that it would look, but definitely this has that kind of feel to me. It's such an interesting deck, honestly. If anyone ever wants to know more about it, you'll have to let me know. How many decks have I done? Because I feel like I'm probably nearing the end, which is a good thing, because I've kept you on here for quite some time. It's like 45 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right, 2 lots to go. Heads up, this is, if you don't like swearing and you don't like silly artwork with boobs and penises and stuff like that in, you're not going to like this deck. Okay. So there's fair warning. This is called the Arcane Bullshit, and this is fucking hilarious. You have the Punch and Judy tarot. Oh, that's so cool. I would love to see that because I've heard of it, but I've not seen it. And I feel like my dad would be really interested in that. And he doesn't read, he has read tarot, but he doesn't really read tarot. But he does like collecting curiosities himself and would probably consider that one. And speaking of my wonderful, strange father, because I am his wonderful, strange daughter, the Arcane Bullshit is a deck that I think he may have even introduced to me. But we kickstarted this together. So he has a copy as well, because this is where this part of my sense of humour comes from. And it's all butts and farts and penises and stuff. It's freaking massive. I'm only going to hold half of it because I will drop it. This is much further away from what I've been showing you and more in line with just being strange, but funny strange, if this is your sense of humour, of course. It just doesn't make sense. There's nothing about this that makes sense. And yet it does. It's a fantastic reader. It's trippy on the eyes. Like, I don't know if that's coming through on the camera, but it honestly, sometimes my eyes can't even take it. This fucking guy. This is where all strange got together and come to have a party. That's what Arcane Bullshit is. Vengeance. Yeah, baby. You got it some years ago. Okay. I'm really intrigued. You have to let me know. Like, do you have a channel, or have you shared it anywhere before? I'll have to look it up otherwise. Now, I don't know what else to tell you about this and the pantsless beekeeper. What I will say is, as freaking hilariously, I don't know, crude, bizarre, just out there and not on, an everyday wavelength that this is, it reads really well. You can do serious readings with this. Now, I mean, why would you not want to do fun ones? Doing fun readings with this is an absolute joy. But I paired this with my Brady Tarot last year or the year before, I can't remember. And they read really well together. I was so freaking surprised. I almost felt a bit bad for people that they wasn't getting funny readings out of them for me, because I was sharing the readings on Instagram. But I couldn't get over how on point it was and how much they synced up with the tarot. So I would argue that's possibly the strangest thing about this deck, is in a bid to almost poke fun, I suppose, at the occult and maybe how serious we can take ourselves sometimes, just as humans, but even in occult circles. Like, honestly, it's not all freaking seriousness. That seems like such a shame. But in a bid to sort of poke fun at it, the creator, Evan, has still made something that works really well. And that's the irony of it, isn't it? That we can work with whatever symbols. It's called the Tragically Comic or Comically Tragic Tarot of Mr. Punch. Oh, that's so awesome. I will look it up then. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me, because even if I can just find a video of it, I will share it with my dad, and that will be something strange and funny we will look at together. I like the tragically comic. I feel like this is tragically comic as well. Like meaningless garbage. That's, yeah. Basically, meaningless garbage is life. We give stuff so much meaning, which is exactly what we're doing with the curiosity cabinet, right? Chaos mum. Who doesn't have a chaos mum? Come on. So, yeah. I do know there's a few people knocking around YouTube that definitely have this deck. I've seen people read with it for hilarious readings. I've seen other people do some serious ones with it. It's a plethora of symbology. I mean, it's fully packed. And the whole Kickstarter experience, which I don't kickstart decks often at all, it was either a birthday or a Christmas gift, but my dad gave me the money so that we could both back it individually, so we'd get all of the, the add-ons. So I've got like goat worshipper pins and big sexy Satan pins, which it's a shame I couldn't show you big sexy Satan, because he is something to behold. He is a big sexy Satan. He just didn't show up today, unfortunately. But yeah. And then the last one that I chose, which I decided, instead of, because I've got some Deviant Moon decks, but people already shared those, I nearly added the Fairies Oracle, because Brian Froud's Fairies, hell yeah, curio cabinet. Not that they would stay in there though, because they're fae and they do what they want. So I decided nope. And I thought, what could I pick that's a little bit out of what I have shown already? And again, it's going back to those books that I shared in the beginning, but these are my playing card decks. I've not included other playing card decks that don't fit this theme, and I have sort of cheated, so I will only get one out. But this is my final 10th edition, I suppose, 10th slot for the curios. I think I've shown 10. And that is, these are basically the books that I was showing you, but in playing card form. And I do all sorts of strange things with these, in terms of I will actually take not so much the Butterflies of the World one out, because of course then they're all over the world, but I will take the insect and the mushroom ones out with me, and I'll use them to ID things if I can, in the same way that I might use, say, a bird watching book. I am such a nerd. I will study animals and in all varieties, insects to, you know, huge big fluffy ones, not insects but mammals, and all that's in between. And I'm trying to think of what one has the best artwork. This one is a photo one, but it is pretty freaking gorgeous. But I feel like these make for really good curiosities because it's like having a little spot the mushroom guide, but in a deck. And because they are playing cards, I play solitaire with them. This one's pretty new. My friend sent this to me recently, so it's mostly in order. But I will also, other than using them as like a field guide, I suppose, you can also use them to just read the playing cards if you're familiar with that. I'm learning. I'm not very good at it, but I am learning. And this is my last inclusion because essentially it all comes back to nature being the thing that I find most curious, most fascinating, most inspiring. And because of that, it's the thing that I suppose I explore and surround myself around and look for the history of it the most. So these ones are very similar to the book that I showed you. I really enjoy the artwork for this. I actually didn't love the artwork for these ones as much. Some of the mushrooms were, because each one has different artists, and that's when I found this deck, and it was only available in America, and my lovely bestie sent it to me. But you can also learn their genius name if you want to get super nerdy. And this is the kind of thing that I would totally have like propped up, and then I don't want to touch that wasp because it still has its freaking stinger. Poor thing. Propped up with like with a dome in front of it, you know, it has that's how I would create my cabinet. That's definitely a mood. Mostly I don't have stuff out on display this accessible because of my cat. So that's why I have domes, and the rest of my domes I didn't create myself, other people did, but I don't know if I can reach one to give you an example. This is a crow's foot, but I also have a rose with a bumblebee on, and then I actually added a bumblebee that I found into it as a secondary. But yeah, I thought my playing cards would be a fun little 10th edition. Something silly, something a bit different to what I'd shown you already, and definitely in keeping with the kind of theme that I was going for. So it's been nearly an hour, and this is, again, thank you for hanging out with me. This is why I don't do lives on YouTube, but we'll see. Maybe it will go down really well, maybe it will have some replayability, maybe it won't, and that's really how I'll decide whether I do more of these or not. But I have had fun because I wanted to record this earlier and I kept getting interrupted, and then I just thought, do you know what, I'm just going to come on and do it this way. So I really appreciate the few of you that showed up and kept me company whilst I was blathering on about all of the things that I find curious and interesting. If you do the tag, let me know. It's possible that I've watched your video already and that I was multitasking and didn't get a chance to comment, because I am trying to comment a lot more on the videos that I watch rather than just watching them, because it's nice to have that sense of community, and also as a creator myself, albeit not as often over here, but I know how nice it is to get that engagement. So I may have watched it and then it will remind me to come back and comment, but if I haven't, then I would love to watch more of them, because I'm trying to follow the tag, but it gets away from me sometimes. Sorry, my cat is, she's bored. She's like, I've done an hour with you. I've done an hour in here. Why are we shut in this room? I didn't shut her in here on purpose. She decided she wanted to be with me, and now she's changed her mind. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad that you enjoy my videos and my endless rambling. That's always good. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I really hope that it lets me save it and keep it up on YouTube, and I will potentially be back for some more. I'll just read the last few comments that are coming through because I know that they're delayed, but I'm actually getting them now. Dee Dee, this was very fun live. Please keep doing them. I love your collection so much. And Bed Knobs and Broomsticks has always been a big love of mine. Thank you, best to you. Oh, thank you. I love it when people recognise where my name's from. And fun fact, my partner and I watched Bed Knobs and Broomsticks again just yesterday. And so the cat comes on, which is Cosmic Creepers. I couldn't use the S in my name on Instagram, which is why it's got the little dash on YouTube, because it was already taken. It's quite popular within sort of my age and up. It depends how old you are. But there was already Cosmic Creepers, so I went Cosmic Creeper because I felt like it worked. My partner said to me, I realised that it came from Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, but I didn't realise that it was a tatty old angry cat. And he said, it just feels even more fitting now. I said, oh, thank you. If that's not the most backwards compliment in the world, because he genuinely said it out of love. It's like, I'm a proper cat lady and I have a lot of health issues going on, like a lot. It's been really difficult, and so I'm always saying I feel super ragged around the edges, and life is a struggle, especially considering that I'm not that old. But it was really funny, so yeah, it's a great compliment. Yeah, to me it's a and that cat holds its own. Like, that cat is fierce. I am here for it. So, and she is, Eglantine Price is for me such a fun witch, because it was in an era when people weren't, when witches were depicted, and I have nothing against, like, I like the Halloween witch as well, you know, it's fun, but it's all that we saw. Pointy hats, whether the witches were considered aesthetically beautiful or not, it was pointy hats, it was this, it was that, it was the other. So to see her doing witchery in a different capacity was just so interesting. And yeah, I love that movie. I do love a good sing-song. I don't have a good voice, but I do love a good sing-song. So yeah, I'll add that ramble in, but I really should finish this up because no one's going to watch it back. But yous have been awesome. Thank you so much. And I will definitely take that into account, that you enjoyed it, and consider doing more of these, because whilst they're longer, it does mean no editing, and selfishly that would really help me out, but it also means that I'll be on YouTube more. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. Thank you for hanging out with me all, and I will speak to you all soon. And if you want to keep up with me more, then Instagram probably. But yeah, bye.